I don't know how Nick Cutter wrote this book without making himself vomit. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I owe you a Pick My Book review from October. I've had this book read for a while. I didn't successfully finish it in October, but I did finish it shortly thereafter, and I just haven't had the opportunity to talk to you guys about it. But that is The Troop by Nick Cutter. This is the book out of the 5 options for October that you wanted me to read. I read it, and now I'm going to tell you about it. If you are unfamiliar with this book, the story follows kind of like a Boy Scout troop in Canada who annually go on this camping trip to an island off the coast. And while on this island, a stranger shows up carrying some genetically modified disease that then starts to infect the troop and their leader. This is a straight up horror novel. It is, oddly enough, probably the most disgusting book I've ever read. The most disgusting and uncomfortable book that I've ever read, not because it's gratuitous gore, but because it just features this disease that kind of grosses me out. You know, we all have our things, right? So I read a lot of bloody, horror, disgusting things, and I'm desensitized to the majority of it. But I can definitely say, when it comes to The Troop, I am not desensitized to the content contained therein. I was really grossed out. That said, I did like it. I liked it a lot. It's probably different. It was a different experience for me because it's a really odd kind of mixture of all these horrifying things, and I haven't ever read a book like it. It was graphic. That's all I can keep saying, is that it was really gross. I really like the characterization of this book. The way that we start out the book saying these 5 boys in this troop, early teenagers, as being these innocent kids that you know something terrible is about to befall them. But as the novel progresses, you start to see these boys for who they are, flaws and all. And each of them is very different, and each of them has, in some ways, stereotypical qualities, and in other ways, very unique qualities from one another. And that was one of the things that I really appreciated about the novel. The other thing that I really appreciated is that it starts out immediately. There's no build up, there's no waiting, there's no backstory. Like, this book is 99% action, or at least, if not action, then very tense moments that directly contribute to the overall plot. Like, there's nothing that I hate more in a thriller or a horror novel than big, long, boring sections of book where nothing happens. I don't get that in The Troop. The Troop, it's all relevant. It's all high tension, high stakes. It's scary. It's gross. I will say that the ending confused me a bit, and maybe I might have missed something. I'm trying to decide if it's a happy ending or a not happy ending, and I'm kind of confused by the way that Nick Cutter leaves it. So I don't mind that. I like an ambiguous ending. I like not knowing exactly what happens after the book. But in this case, I was confused about it because I definitely thought it was one way, and then the last couple sentences of the book were like, wait a second, look, did I miss something? So I don't, or at least I hope that doesn't give too much away about the book. I can understand why this book has as much attention and acclaim as it has, why it's so popular on booktube and just horror readers in general. Definitely deserving of that. I'd have to look in though to other Nick Cutter books to see if I want to read more from him. I'm not going to say that I don't. It was just, it was a good book. It was a good book. It was a good example of the kind of horror that I do enjoy, even though it was different from every other horror novel I've talked about. But it didn't like stand out from a writing perspective. I think that Nick Cutter successfully creeped me out. I think that there were a lot of things Nick Cutter had to educate himself on in order to write this book. And that's very impressive to me. But he's still an author that his subject matter would be key. The subject matter of his books would be key in determining whether or not I picked them up to read them. I'm not running out there to pick up every Nick Cutter novel, if that makes any sense. I am really glad that you picked this one for me to read because I needed to read it. It was sort of getting sad that I hadn't read it yet. And I did, like I said, enjoy it. It was really difficult. It was very hard to read. And again, I was talking to my coworker recently who is another avid reader, and she was telling me about a book that she accidentally bought based on like an Audible suggestion. And she was telling me that she DNF'd it because it was so disgusting and disturbing, and that it had never presented itself as being disgusting. Like, she bought it not realizing how awful it was going to be. And I said, yeah, I said, you know, sometimes authors can kind of smack you across the face. Well, come to find out that book was Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. And it got me thinking, you know, I read Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, but was not nearly as affected as a lot of other people, like my coworker, seem to be. A lot of people describe that book as like being difficult to take. And it's cringy. It's definitely content that isn't fun to read. It's unsettling, but it's not gross. Like, this book, The Troop, is gross. While it's not as overtly violent as the majority of other books that I read, be them horror or thriller, it's more disgusting. The disease itself is disgusting. The things that these boys do are disgusting. What they have to do or what they get pleasure from doing, it's all very gross. It's just gross. And it's because of those things, like, I don't think that I'll ever pick this up to read it again. Not like, you know, Brother, which I have read more than once, even though that book has some really disturbing and disgusting things happening in it. It's not gross. The Troop manages to play on some phobias for people, and it must have touched one of mine, just grazed one of mine enough that it's like, ugh, you know. And for those reasons, I don't ever want to put myself in that again, so I won't read it again, but it will go down as being an enjoyed or overall good horror novel that I've read. So again, you know, I'm glad that it was chosen. I don't even remember, because it's been so long ago, what the other options were, but this one is one that I'm definitely happy to tick off my list. And if you have any questions about The Troop by Nick Cutter, or if you want to weigh in and you've read it and maybe you want to discuss some things about it with me, let me know all of those things down in the comment section below. Sorry that I'm very sorry that it took me so long to get back to you about this book. I will do my best to make sure that never happens again, but thank you for hanging in there with me, and hopefully you're happy to hear what I thought about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon.